I've been living in darkness for 3 months, or at least that's what my children believe. They think I'm a useless old woman, a burden who no longer understands anything. Yesterday, while they were eating at my own table, I heard my daughter-in-law say, "I hope she dies soon so we can sell the house and move to Miami Beach." My own son laughed and toasted to that. What they don't know is that the doctor restored my sight 2 weeks ago. I've seen how they steal from me, how they spit in my food. Today is my birthday. I've gathered the whole family. They think I'm going to sign my will, but when I take off these glasses, they'll realize I've seen evil face to face, and today they're going to pay. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. Everything happened too fast. A screech of tires, a dull thud, and then absolute silence. When I woke up in the hospital room, the world I knew had disappeared. There were no lights, no shapes, only a dense and suffocating blackness that pressed against my chest. Dr. Harrison's voice sounded grave and distant as he gave me the news. He explained that the impact had severely damaged my optic nerves. He said the blindness could be temporary, but there was also a possibility it could be permanent. I needed absolute rest, zero stress, and a lot of patience. Patience. An easy word to say when you're not the one trapped in eternal night. Barely 24 hours after returning home, the sound of a familiar engine roared in the driveway. It was them, Michael, my only son, and Jessica, his wife. They didn't come to visit. They came to stay. I heard the unmistakable sound of several heavy suitcases being dragged across the marble floor of the entrance hall. Too many suitcases for a short visit. "Look, Mom, you can't be alone in this condition," Michael said with that trembling voice he always had when he was lying, or when Jessica was nearby. "We've decided to move in here to take care of you. It's best for everyone." They didn't ask me, didn't request permission. They simply invaded my space. I felt Jessica's perfume, a sweet and cloying fragrance, flood the room. She approached me and gave me a kiss on the cheek, a cold and wet kiss that sent a shiver down my spine. "Don't worry about anything, Margaret," Jessica said, using that name form she knew I detested. "Now we'll take care of everything. You just rest and let us handle your affairs." From that first day, my home stopped being mine. Maria, my faithful housekeeper for 30 years, was relegated to the kitchen. Jessica took immediate control of the house. I heard her heels clicking through the hallways as if she were the owner and lady of the place. She started shouting orders, moving furniture around with the excuse that it was for my safety, though I knew she just wanted to erase my trace. The first week was torture disguised as attentiveness. At mealtimes, Jessica insisted on feeding me by mouth as if, in addition to being blind, I had become invalid or stupid. "Open your mouth." "Come on, a little more," she'd say with a fake voice tone, similar to what's used with babies. "It's a delicious soup I prepared especially for you." The soup was lukewarm and bland, but I had to swallow it to avoid creating conflict. Michael barely spoke during dinners. I only heard the clinking of his fork against the plate and the sound of wine being poured into crystal glasses. My best crystal, which I only used at Christmas. They were celebrating, but I didn't know what. The true nature of their visit began to reveal itself with small, subtle, but alarming details. One afternoon, I asked Maria to bring me my jewelry box from the dresser. I wanted to feel with my fingers the jade and gold ring that belonged to my mother, a talisman that always gave me peace in difficult moments. Maria took a moment, and then her voice sounded worried. "Mrs. Margaret, the ring isn't in its usual place." Panic hit me. I knew the order of my things to perfection. I asked to call Jessica. When she entered the room, she didn't even pretend to search. "Oh, Margaret, you probably lost it before the accident. Don't you remember?" she said with insulting lightness. "With age and the blow to your head, it's normal for memory to fail. Stop worrying about material things. Now what's important is your health." I know it was there, Jessica, I insisted, trying to maintain firmness in my voice. Well, it's not there anymore, she cut in dryly. And please, don't accuse anyone. Here, it's only us taking care of you. You should be more grateful instead of inventing stories about lost jewelry. Michael entered at that moment, attracted by the discussion. I hoped my son would defend me, that he would at least offer to search for the ring. Mom, Jessica's right, he said, sighing with annoyance. You're very upset. The doctor said you shouldn't stress yourself. You probably stored it somewhere else and forgot. It'll turn up. I remained silent, clenching my fists under the sheets. I hadn't lost it. Someone had taken it, and that someone was sleeping under my roof. That night, insomnia was my only companion. I sharpened my hearing, trying to decipher the sounds of the house that now felt alien to me. Past midnight, when everyone was supposedly asleep, I heard the creak of my office door located on the ground floor. They were stealthy steps, but not enough to fool someone who now depended entirely on their hearing. I heard the metallic sound of a drawer opening, the drawer where I kept the checkbooks and property documents. Then a murmur of voices. It was them. Did you find the safe combination? Jessica's voice asked, a sharp whisper that climbed the stairs like a snake. No, it's not in the planner, Michael responded, sounding nervous. Mom's always been very careful with those numbers. Well, we'll have to convince her to give it to us, she replied impatiently. We need that money, Michael. The debts won't wait, and your mother won't release control willingly. Tomorrow, I'll call the lawyer. We'll tell him to come update some papers. Do you think she'll sign? He asked. If she doesn't see what she's signing, what choice does she have? She's a blind old woman, Michael. She depends on us for everything. We'll do whatever's necessary. The sound of the drawer closing resonated like a gunshot in the darkness. My heart was beating so loud, I feared they could hear it from downstairs. The initial sadness about my blindness instantly transformed into cold and paralyzing terror. They weren't here to take care of me. They were here like vultures waiting to devour what was left of me. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day. But YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. 2 months of darkness passed, 2 months of living feeling walls and enduring the false charity of my son and his wife. But one morning, the impossible happened. When I opened my eyelids, the absolute blackness that had imprisoned me dissolved slightly. It wasn't clear vision. It was like looking through glass fogged by steam. But there it was, a grayish spot indicating the window. It was sunlight. My heart gave a violent leap in my chest. A miracle. Doctor, Harrison was right. My nerves were awakening. Joy flooded me all at once. I had to shout it. I had to run find Michael and tell him his mother wasn't finished, that soon I'd be able to see his face again. I got up from bed clumsily, but with an energy I hadn't felt in weeks. I advanced toward the hallway, guided by memories of my house and by those new blurry shadows dancing before my eyes. I was going to call them shouting. I was going to share my happiness, when a shrill laugh stopped me dead just before reaching the entrance hall. It was Jessica, and she wasn't laughing with joy. She was laughing with a malice that froze the blood. I hid instinctively behind the large marble column. I squinted, forcing my newly recovered sight. The shapes were blurry specters, but distinguishable. They were sitting on my favorite sofa. Michael had his feet up on the coffee table, something I never allowed. And I recognized the bottle Jessica was holding by its peculiar shape. It was my late husband's special reserve wine, a bottle we kept for a sacred occasion. This old woman is made of iron, Jessica said, and I saw how she swirled the glass with disdain. The doctor said she was delicate, that the accident would weaken her, but she keeps breathing as if nothing happened. She's a nuisance, Michael. A damn nuisance. I felt as if I'd been slapped. I brought a hand to my mouth to stifle a moan. I waited for my son's response, praying to heaven he'd silence her, reprimand her. "I know, honey," Michael responded, and his voice sounded slurred, as if he were already drunk at mid-morning. "Canceling the trip to Paris was a mistake. This playing nurse thing has me fed up. Mom demands too much time and doesn't even appreciate it." "I have the solution," she said, throwing some papers on the table. The sound of the sheets falling resonated like a sentence. "Sell the house. It's too big for a useless blind woman. With that money we pay off your gambling debts, which aren't few, and we go far away. Buy something modern on the coast." "And my mother?" he asked, though he didn't sound worried, just cautious. "People will talk if we leave her on the street." "Nobody's leaving her on the street. Don't be dramatic. There's a nursing home on the outskirts past the industrial zone. It's called Final Rest or something like that. It's cheap, and they accept cases like hers. Their professionals will take care of her, and we'll be free." "It's a horrible place, Jessica. They say elderly people die of sadness there within weeks." "Well, all the better," she replied coldly. "That way she'll stop suffering and we'll inherit the rest faster. Think about it, Michael. It's either her or us. We need the cash now." There was a silence that seemed eternal to me. My legs were trembling so much I had to lean against the wall to avoid falling. Finally, I saw my son's shadow nod slowly as he poured himself more wine. "Do it," Michael said. "Prepare the papers. Just make sure she signs the powers this week. I can't stand her complaints about the food anymore or having to listen to her stories about the past." The world came crashing down on me, but this time it wasn't from an accident. It was from the purest and most painful betrayal. My tears flowed hot and bitter, but I made no sound. I backed away step by step with extreme care, returning to the safety of my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling with rage and pain. They wanted to get rid of me like I was garbage. They wanted to lock me away to die alone while they spent the estate my husband and I built with so much effort. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell them anything. If they knew I was recovering my sight, they'd be more careful. They'd hide their plans, or worse yet, they'd accelerate my end. I had to keep being the poor, blind woman. I had to swallow my pride and feign weakness to see how far they were capable of going. The door to my room opened gently. It was Maria bringing breakfast. I recognized her light and respectful step. When she approached to leave the tray, I grabbed her wrist with a strength that scared her. "Mrs. Margaret," she asked with an alarmed voice. "What's wrong? Are you feeling ill?" I leaned close to her ear and whispered, making sure no one in the hallway could hear. "Lock the door, Maria, right now." She obeyed, confused. When she returned to my side, I raised my eyes and looked directly at her, focusing as best I could on her worried face. "I can see Maria," I confessed, and I saw how her eyes opened wide. "I see your blurry face. I see the light. But I've also just seen my executioners in the living room." Maria brought her hands to her mouth, about to let out a cry of joy, but I made her an imperious signal for silence. "No one can know," I ordered with a steel voice. "For them, I'm still blind. They're going to try to sell me and lock me away, Maria. But they don't know I now have the advantage. You'll be my eyes for the details, and I'll be the judge. From today, the war begins. Are you with me?" Maria, with tears in her eyes, took my hand and kissed it with reverence. "Until death, ma'am." "Until death." "Good," I said, lying back on the pillows and closing my eyes to assume my role. "Then get ready, because we're going to hunt vultures." Each day that passed, the fog in my eyes dissipated a little more, transforming blurry shadows into sharp figures. What I initially considered a divine blessing soon became my worst nightmare. Seeing reality was much more painful than imagining it. Now I didn't just hear the contempt in their voices. I could see the grimace of disgust on their faces every time they looked at me. Lunchtime became the most torturous moment of the day. Sitting at the head of the table, pretending to stare into space, I watched as Maria, with her head down and eyes full of helplessness, served the plates. For Michael and Jessica, juicy steaks, fresh seafood, and colorful salads. The aroma flooded the dining room, This smells delicious, Michael commented with his mouth full, cutting a large piece of meat. Maria outdid herself today. Yes, it's exquisite, Jessica agreed. Then she turned to me and changed her tone to that childish and fake voice that sickened me. For you there's also a feast, Margaret. Nutritious soup so you can recover your strength. I lowered my eyes to my plate. What I saw turned my stomach. There was no meat or fresh vegetables. It was a grayish broth, dirty water, with a couple of pieces of old potato and meat gristle that surely had been left over from the previous dinner. It was food I wouldn't even give to a stray dog. Eat, Mom. It's getting cold, Michael insisted without stopping devouring his steak. I took the spoon trembling, not from age, but from contained rage. I swallowed that tasteless water, feeling how each sip burned my pride. But the worst wasn't the hunger. It was the systematic humiliation. A few minutes later, I felt thirsty. I extended my right hand, feeling the table in search of my water glass, remembering perfectly where Maria had left it. My fingers approached the crystal, but then I saw Jessica's hand move quick as a viper. She pushed the glass a few centimeters toward the edge of the table, just out of my logical reach. When my hand advanced, my fingers hit the edge of the displaced glass. The crystal fell to the floor and shattered, spilling water on the Persian rug. "For God's sake, Margaret," Jessica shouted, jumping up. "You're a disaster! Look what you've done! That rug costs a fortune!" "I'm sorry. I thought it was there," I murmured, lowering my head to hide the hatred in my eyes. "You always thought, you always believed," she spat with venom. "You're like a clumsy child, Michael. Do you see this? We can't have nice things with her here. She's useless." Michael didn't even look up from his plate. He kept eating, ignoring his mother being scolded like a criminal for a simple glass of water. His silence hurt me more than her screaming. That same afternoon, I pretended to take my usual nap. I lay on the living room sofa, closed my eyes, and regulated my breathing, waiting. They didn't take long to appear. I heard Jessica's heels and then saw her enter the living room. She wasn't alone. She carried several garments hanging from her arm. My garments. With total shamelessness, she stood in front of the large gilded mirror in the living room, took off her blouse, and began trying on my silk dresses, those my husband brought me from his trips through Europe. "It looks much better on me," Jessica said, admiring her reflection and turning to see her hips. "The old woman looked like a potato sack in this. She has good taste for buying. Too bad her body's already decrepit." She put on one of my pearl necklaces and posed ridiculously. Then she did something that froze my blood. She approached where I was sleeping. She leaned over my face, so close I could smell her wine breath. She observed me with macabre curiosity, looking for some sign of intelligent life behind my closed eyelids. I kept my breathing inert like a corpse. "Tick-tock, Margaret," she whispered. "Tick-tock, your time is running out." She walked away laughing and went back upstairs with my clothes. When I was sure she'd left, I sat up gasping for air. Rage had replaced fear. I was no longer a victim. I was a witness. I called Maria. She came running, drying her hands on her apron. "Maria, the plan must begin today," I said firmly. "I'm not waiting anymore." "What do you need, ma'am?" "I need proof. Today during tea time, I saw how she spit in my tea before bringing it. I had to fake a spasm and spill the cup to avoid drinking that filth. But nobody will believe us with just my word. They say I'm crazy, that I'm old. We need the world to see what I see." I handed Maria a thick envelope with cash I'd managed to hide in the lining of my pillow before the accident. "Go to the electronics store downtown. Buy those small cameras, the ones used to watch babies, and a voice recorder, the smallest you can find. But ma'am, if Mr. Michael finds them, he won't find them. We'll hide them where they never look, in the books they never read, in the old ornaments they despise. I want a camera in the dining room and another in the living room, and I want the recorder taped under the coffee table." Maria nodded with a new determination in her gaze. "I'll do it right now, Mrs. Margaret." That night, While Michael and Jessica slept off the drunkenness of their own evil, Maria and I turned my house into a trap. We installed the electronic eyes that don't blink. Every insult, every theft, every plate of rotten food would be recorded. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling in the darkness, but this time I smiled. Jessica thought she was playing with a blind and defenseless old woman. She didn't know she'd just awakened a lioness protecting the only thing she had left, her dignity. The plate was served, and it was very cold. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. My executioner's patience ran out 3 days later. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon, breaking the tense silence of the house. I heard Jessica run to the entrance, whispering urgently to Michael. "It's him. Behave, Michael. Remember, this is just a medical formality. For her." Jessica stopped herself before opening the door. A man entered. His voice was unknown to me, pasty and loaded with artificial kindness that made my hair stand on end. He introduced himself as Mr. Stevens, a supposed insurance specialist. Jessica guided me to the dining room and sat me at the head, placing a stack of papers in front of me. "Margaret, so good to see you," the man said, dragging a chair to sit beside me. "Jessica and Michael have told me about your accident. We're here to make sure you have the best possible care. We just need to update your medical insurance policy." "It's urgent, Mom," Michael added, putting a cold pen in my hand. "If you don't sign this today, you could lose your hospital coverage." I squinted behind my dark glasses. For them, I was staring into space, lost in my blindness. But the reality was that my sight, though still sensitive to bright light, was sharp enough to read the large letters of the document's heading. I lowered my gaze discreetly. There was no insurance company logo, no medical terms. In black and bold letters, right in the center of the first page, it read, "Total transfer of rights and property." The air got stuck in my throat. They didn't just want to sell me. They wanted me to hand them the rope to hang myself. They wanted me to give them my house, my bank accounts, and my freedom with a single signature, under the pretext of taking care of me. "Where should I sign?" I asked, with a trembling voice, feigning disorientation. "Here, right on the line below," Jessica indicated, guiding my hand impatiently. I felt her fingers digging into my wrist, anxious, desperate. I brought the tip of the pen close to the paper. I felt the held breath of the 3 vultures around me. They were so close to their victory they could almost taste it. But I wasn't going to sign my death sentence. Just before touching the paper, I faked a violent spasm in my arm. My hand shook forcefully, and I dropped the pen. It rolled across the table and fell to the floor, far away, under the lawyer's chair. "Oh my God!" I exclaimed, bringing my hands to my chest. "My hand. I don't know what's wrong with me." "I've had these tremors since the accident." Jessica let out a huff of frustration she didn't bother to hide. "Please, Margaret," she shouted. "It's just a signature. Stop being theatrical." "I'm sorry, dear. I'm sorry," I said, starting to whimper to increase her irritation. "I'm very nervous. I don't see anything, and you're asking me to sign things I don't understand. Why are there so many pages for insurance?" The lawyer bent down to get the pen, panting. Michael got up and started pacing back and forth. "Mom, concentrate," Michael said, trying to sound calm, though his voice dripped with fury. "It's for your own good. If you don't sign, we can't pay for your medicines." "I'll try, son, I'll try," I said, taking the pen the lawyer grudgingly handed back to me. I brought my hand close again. This time I let the tip of the pen fall hard on the paper, but in the wrong place, tearing the sheet and leaving a blue ink stain that ruined the document. "No!" Jessica screamed, hitting the table with her palm. "You've ruined the original copy. You're useless." "Jessica, calm down," the lawyer intervened, though he looked tense. "I have another copy in my briefcase, but Mrs. Robinson, you must be more careful." While they took out the second copy, I knew I couldn't fake clumsiness forever. I needed to buy time. I needed the perfect stage to unmask them. I left the pen on the table and crossed my arms, adopting a posture of stubborn dignity. I'm not going to sign today, I said firmly. The silence in the room was sepulchral. What did you say? Michael asked, approaching dangerously close to my chair. I said I'm not going to sign today. I'm tired, I'm confused, and I feel pressured. If I'm going to give up control of my health, I want to do it right. Do it right? Jessica laughed with disbelief. What does that mean? It means I want to say goodbye, I lied, turning my face toward where I knew she was. I know you want to take me to that rest home. I've heard you whispering. Don't deny it. Michael tried to protest, but I raised my hand to silence him. And it's okay. Maybe it's for the best. I'm a burden. But if I'm going to leave this house, if I'm going to sign these papers so you can manage everything, I want to do it with my head held high. My birthday is this weekend. So what? Jessica spat. I want a party, one last big dinner here. I want to invite my cousins, my husband's old business partners, Father Daniels. I want everyone here, and in front of them, in front of all the witnesses, I'll sign those papers. You're crazy, Michael said. We don't have time for parties. It's my only condition, I pronounced, gently hitting the table. If there's no party, there's no signature. You can try to force me, you can try to forge my signature, but if you do, I'll scream to the four winds that you're robbing me. But if you give me my party, I'll sign everything with a smile and leave peacefully. Jessica and Michael exchanged glances. I could see through my eyelashes how they calculated. A party would give them the perfect alibi. They could show themselves to society as the selfless children celebrating their sick mother before admitting her for her own good. Besides, my signature in front of witnesses would make the document irrefutable. They thought it was the vanity of a senile old woman. They thought they'd won. All right, Mom, Michael finally said with a crooked smile. You'll have your party. We'll invite everyone. But Saturday night, when the candles go out, you sign everything and you leave. Deal, I responded. The lawyer put away the papers, visibly relieved. Jessica left the room grumbling about having to hire a catering service. I was left alone in the dining room, listening to their steps fade away. I touched the cold wood of the table. They'd bitten the bait. They didn't know I wasn't planning my farewell, but my revenge. The party would be the stage, the guests would be the jury, and they would be the accused in the most public trial of their lives. Time was running out. Only a few hours remained until the party, and the house had transformed into a hive of frantic activity. Jessica had hired an expensive team of decorators, determined to impress high society with money that didn't belong to her yet. From my room I heard the dragging of furniture and the clinking of fine crystal. Sounds that in another time would have gladdened me, but now sounded like war. Taking advantage of the chaos of the preparations, Maria managed to sneak Attorney Henderson in through the service entrance. He was an older man, with a severe face and unwavering loyalty, who had served my husband for decades. We met in the kitchen's small pantry, the only safe place, far from the indiscreet ears of my son. Mrs. Margaret, Henderson whispered, taking my hands with concern. Maria has told me everything, but I need to see it to believe it. Is it true they want to force you to give up everything? Without saying a word, I took the digital recorder I'd kept in my pocket from my jacket. I pressed the play button. Jessica's voice filled the small space, clear and cruel. That old woman never dies. If she doesn't sign willingly, we'll give her the wrong pills and say it was an accident. I need that money to pay the mortgage on the beach house. Attorney Henderson's face paled. He clenched his jaw so hard I could see the muscles in his neck tense. This is attempted homicide and fraud, Margaret, he said in a grave voice. We can call the police right now. I have enough evidence to have them arrested before the party starts. No, I stopped him, putting a hand on his shoulder. The police will come, yes, but not yet. I want them to sign their own sentence. I want them to do it in front of everyone they're trying to impress. I handed Henderson a thick envelope with copies of the security videos and recordings. Bring the real documents, attorney, the ones we drafted years ago. And bring the notary public. Tonight, there will be a signing, but it won't be the one they expect. Henderson nodded, put the evidence in his briefcase, and left as stealthily as he'd entered. Meanwhile, upstairs, Michael and Jessica's arrogance had no limits. Jessica paced the hallway, talking on the phone loudly with a friend, bragging about her future fortune. "Yes, dear, finally," she said between laughs. "The old woman will sign tonight. She says she wants to retire to rest. It was about time. Tomorrow, I'm ordering that sports car I told you about. Get it in red. I want it in red." I peeked slightly through the half-open door. Jessica wore a gold-sequined dress, vulgar and excessive, bought that same morning with my emergency credit card. That card I kept for critical medical situations. Michael was beside her, adjusting his tie in front of the hallway mirror with a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Do you think she suspects anything?" Michael asked, looking at his reflection with vanity. "Please, Michael," she responded, hanging up the phone. "She's a senile blind woman who just wants to eat cake and receive applause. She thinks we're giving her a tribute. It's pathetic." "Good, because I invited the club partners. I need them to see I have control of the family estate so they'll accept my investment." "You'll have it, my love. Tonight, we're the kings." I returned to my vanity. My hands no longer trembled. A mother's sadness had given way to the cold resolution of a judge. I opened my closet and took out the dress I'd chosen for the occasion. Black velvet, elegant, sober, imposing. It was the dress I wore at my husband's funeral, an armor of dignity against pain. I dressed alone, buttoning each button with precision, enjoying my recovered motor skills. I brushed my white hair and pulled it into a high bun, strict. Finally, I took the dark glasses from the table. I looked at them for a moment. They were my mask, my refuge, but soon they would be the weapon that would destroy their lies. I put them on and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a fragile old woman. I saw a matriarch about to defend her legacy. The door burst open without knocking. It was Jessica. "Well, you look decent," she said, looking me up and down without hiding her contempt. "Let's go, Margaret. The guests are arriving, and we don't want to keep them waiting. Remember you're part of the deal. You smile, you greet, you blow out the candles, and you sign. No long speeches or grandmother stories." I stood up slowly, leaning on my cane, pretending to feel the floor. "Don't worry, Jessica," I said with a soft voice. "I'll do exactly what's expected of me. It'll be an unforgettable night." She let out a mocking little laugh and grabbed my arm forcefully, almost dragging me toward the door. "I hope so, because after today, dear mother-in-law, things are going to change a lot around here." We went out to the hallway. I heard the murmur of people downstairs, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Michael was waiting for us at the foot of the stairs, smiling like he owned the world. "Ready, Mom?" he asked from below. I took a deep breath. The stage was set. The actors were in their positions, and I, the supposed victim, was about to change the script forever. "More ready than ever, son," I murmured to myself as I took the first step toward the abyss they themselves had dug. Applause erupted when Michael guided me to the center of the living room. I felt the heat of the spotlights and the murmur of dozens of guests, club partners, distant relatives, and curious neighbors. Jessica quickly approached, holding the microphone in one hand and the folder with the fraudulent documents in the other. Her smile was as bright as it was false. "Good evening, everyone," Jessica said, projecting her voice theatrically. "Today, we celebrate the life of our dear Margaret, but it's also a bittersweet night, as she's decided to retire to rest and cede administration of her legacy to her beloved son, Michael." Jessica put the microphone in my hand and placed the open folder on a high table they'd prepared. "Say a few words, mother-in-law, and sign here so we can start serving the champagne." Michael offered me his gold pen, anxious. All eyes were fixed on me. They expected a babbling old woman. I took the microphone firmly, ignoring the pen. "Before I sign my sentence," I said, and my voice sounded clear and powerful, without the tremor I'd faked for weeks. I want to tell you a little fable. Jessica tried to take the microphone from me, but I moved away brusquely. The silence in the room became absolute. They say that when you raise crows, they peck out your eyes. I raised a crow. I looked toward where I felt Michael's presence and let a viper into my nest. They thought that because I'd lost my sight, I'd also lost my judgment. They thought they could rob me, humiliate me, and spit in my food while I smiled. A murmur of confusion ran through the room. Michael took a step forward, nervous. "Mom, are you tired? That's enough." "Don't interrupt me," I shouted, and with a quick and theatrical movement, I took off my dark glasses and threw them to the floor. I raised my eyes and fixed them directly on Jessica's. She blinked, backing away as if I'd burned her. "Jessica," I said, looking her up and down with contempt, "that gold sequined dress looks ridiculous on you. And by the way, you still have a bit of parsley between your teeth from the dinner you ate secretly in my kitchen an hour ago." People gasped. Jessica brought her hand to her mouth, terrified. I turned to my son. "And you, Michael. I see the sweat on your forehead. I see the fear, because you know it's over." "Mom, you can see," he stammered, pale as a corpse. "It's a miracle." "It's not a miracle. It's a trap, and you fell into it. Maria, now!" From the corner of the room, Maria pressed a button. The enormous television Jessica had installed to show family photos suddenly turned on, but no photos appeared. The video began playing at thunderous volume. All the guests saw in high definition how Jessica spit in my tea days before. They heard the recording of Michael saying, "I hope she dies soon so we can sell the house." They saw how they mocked me, how they stole my jewelry, how they planned to lock me in the cheapest nursing home in the city. The room exploded in shouts of indignation. Michael's partners looked at him with disgust. Jessica tried to run toward the screen to cover it, but she tripped on her own dress and fell to the floor. "It's a lie! It's a setup!" she screamed from the floor, hysterical. "That old woman is crazy!" At that moment, the main doors burst open. Attorney Henderson entered, followed by 2 police officers and the real notary. "The show's over," Henderson said, walking to the table and closing the fake folder. "Michael Robinson, Jessica Robinson, you're under arrest for attempted fraud, document falsification, and elder abuse. I have all the evidence here." Michael tried to flee through the back door, but an officer intercepted him and handcuffed him in front of all his friends. Jessica cried and kicked as they lifted her from the floor, screaming insults no one listened to anymore. "Mother, please," Michael begged when he passed by my side with his hands tied. "I'm your son. You can't do this to me." I looked him in the eyes one last time, feeling immense sorrow but no doubt. "You stopped being my son the day you wished for my death for money. You have no mother, Michael. You only have debts and a cell waiting for you." When the police took them away, silence returned to the room, but this time it was a silence of respect. The notary stepped forward with a new document. "Mrs. Margaret, the new will is ready." "Yes," I said, taking the pen with a firm hand. "All my estate will be donated to the Foundation for the Blind and the City Orphanage. This house will be sold tomorrow. I don't want anything that reminds me of them." I signed the document with an elegant stroke. The guests, recovered from the shock, began to applaud, this time with sincerity. Maria ran to my side and hugged me, crying. "We did it, ma'am," she sobbed. I stroked her hair and looked around me. The house was full of strangers, but for the first time in months, I felt truly at home. I'd lost my family, yes, but I'd recovered something much more valuable: my dignity and my life. "Let's go, Maria," I said, turning my back on the party and walking toward the garden where the night was fresh and clean. "Tomorrow will be a new day, and I'm very excited to see it." Margaret's story leaves us a painful but necessary lesson. Sometimes physical darkness is the only path to see the true light of those around us. There's no sadder loneliness than the company of those who wish you harm, nor greater victory than recovering your own dignity, even if it means walking alone. In the end, losing a toxic family isn't a loss. It's liberation. And you, would you have had the courage to expose your own blood before everyone to save yourself? Or would you have tried to forgive the unforgivable? Leave us your opinion in the comments, because your perspective matters to us. Finally, we want to be transparent with you. This story has been woven with the help of artificial intelligence. Although Margaret and her story are products of fiction, we've put all our heart and human effort into the editing and narrative to give you an unforgettable experience. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.